Welcome to another edition of Against the Current. I'm Dan Proft, coming to you from atop the Old Republic Building, Skyline Club in downtown Chicago. And my guest on this installment is the renowned Page 2 columnist for the Chicago Tribune. He is John Kass. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
I think I was your first guest.
You were.
I was your inaugural guest.
Right.
Right.
Bookending. Now that my career is winding down, I figured we'll do this one more time, and then we'll call it a day, or at least I will. So we're on the eve, fairly close to, of the November 6th midterm elections.
Correct.
And we got a lot to talk about, both state and local. Want to get your insights on all the races. So why don't we start at the top in Illinois, and that would be the mayor's race. No, I mean, let's start. It really is.
The top.
I mean, actually, let's talk about the governor's race by way of the mayor's race, because of this rather unique situation of an open seat for the Chicago mayoralty, and I emphasize "ilty" as in royalty.
And I'm running too,
Oh, that's right, you are running.
I'm a candidate.
Are you circulating petitions?
I don't have to.
You do not have to.
I just put it out there that I'm running on the platform, a completely honest platform. Riches for me, pain and taxation for everyone else.
It's pithy.
I just thought, just be honest for once, right?
You may have to shorten that for the 30-second spots, but I mean, I get the gist of it. I think it's pretty good. Now, to establish residency, you left your wife's wedding dress at the family grocery store? Is that?
I know that you tweeted that out, but that's a complete falsehood. I left 1983 winning ugly White Sox hat and 2 clean pair of boxer shorts in my apartment in Bridgeport 30 years ago.
Is that the 83 hat that's signed by Julio Cruz? That counts.
Right.
So you're eligible to run, no question. But because of that unique situation, your candidacy in particular, but the other candidates too.
Let's talk about them.
Has this been the quietest $250 million ever spent on a statewide race in the history of our country, Rauner and Pritzker? I mean, do you sense any real interest in the governor's race? It's almost being forced upon the electorate to choose between these two, it seems to me.
I can't escape Pritzker. He's got so much money that...
but not enough for toilets.
Not enough for toilets.
Or property taxes.
The toilet thing, I can't let that go. I just can't. As you know...
is it the fraud part of it, or which part of it can't you let go?
Well, the Cook County Inspector General, came out with a report saying that, I think, for exposition, Pritzker had taken the toilets, had bought a building, a mansion next to his own, taken the toilets out of it to make it uninhabitable, and then got a property tax reduction of, what, $230,000 or $300,000?
Yeah, north of $300,000.
Yeah, it's $330,000, so that he could, because he was living next to an inhabitable building.
Right. Now, the most shocking thing about that Inspector General's report was finding out there's a Cook County Inspector General.
That was one.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that bothers me. And I know Christian McQuarrie and others are, who does that and how terrible that is. Mike Madigan, his boss, because if Pritzker is elected, he will be the Mr. Belvedere for Mike Madigan and bring him apple slices or whatever he wants on the silver platter.
That's sort of a cheap shot.
Yeah,
Christopher Hewitt.
Really?
It's a great show.
I was thinking more Clifton Webb, but a fat one. No, the thing that bothers me about it is the Inspector General's report mentions the wife, MK, and others that were involved in coming up with this idea. If you're running for governor, would you let your wife get thrown under the bus? I mean,
is that a trick question?
I can't see Mike Madigan say if there was some, Illinois Arts Council issue, maybe some, communist socialist poet from Argentina or wherever, Venezuela, was not, absconded with cash. Mike would not let his Shirley take the fall. And Pritzker lets his wife take the fall. What kind of guy does that? What kind of guy lets his wife take the fall on a tax dodge?
Well, I mean, it's not like she's going to be indicted or anything.
Just to do it, he should stand. Shouldn't he stand up? Kind of like
he is standing. It just doesn't look like it.
kind of like an I am Spartacus moment and stand up there and say, hey, damn it.
I am Cory Booker.
I am,
and I
am Pritzker, and I told my wife to do this. It bothers me.
Do you think he's the head of their household any more than Bruce Rauner's the head of his?
I'm not going to be as negative on Bruce
I'm asking a
Rauner.
question. That was a neutral question.
I have to learn how to avoid direct questions.
Let me
and
ask you
answer
another
them.
question then. Do you think that when J.B. Pritzker sits around his house, he literally sits around his house? Do you think?
Nice.
So on a serious note, the property tax fraud issue,
Correct.
has Rauner properly capitalized on that? Because, committing property tax fraud when you're a multi-billionaire in a state with the highest property tax in the nation, where people are literally being forced out of their homes and out of the state because of confiscatory property taxes, you think that might have some resonance, but it's not necessarily manifesting itself in the polls.
No, and I don't think he's taken advantage of it. I don't think he played it as he should have. I mean, how many columns did I have to write saying that I would like to see 3 fat plumbers with short T-shirts, the whole plumber butt crack thing,
Sure.
pushing the toilets down.
He kind
That
of
would've
had
been
that
good.
spoof ad, the comedy ad over the summer, and then he's made an issue of it late when the Inspector General report came out. But I mean, he really hasn't driven it home. It's not just funny, like there's a ridicule aspect to it that's legitimate, but there's also do you understand, this guy defrauded you. You're paying
Right.
higher property taxes because of what he did.
Right.
And say that direct.
He didn't do it, and unfortunately he didn't, and the wife thing, I'm serious. Madigan is not a fool, or a cartoon, as Rauner and some others have tried to make him.
Mm-hmm.
He watches stuff like that. He sees there's Pritzker, he's letting his wife take the fall. I mean, everything goes into this, into that Dickensian brain of his.
Right. Okay. But the
And
bottom
he
line,
sees a weakness, and to me, that's a weakness.
but the strength, which is
I hate to ascribe virtues to male and female and husband and wife, but no guy I know, I wouldn't let my wife take the fall for it.
no. I agree.
And
with
neither
you.
would you.
I agree with you. I think that's I actually think that's a legitimate point. It's another thing that Rauner could say if he was a guy like the guys you know.
Okay, let's get it. I brought this recorder because I'm doing a column,
Yeah.
and I might as well.
Are you Rod Rosensteining me?
Please.
Are you going to 25th Amendment me?
I'd like to know. I mean, what I'm interested in, Dan Proft,
Yeah.
is
I'm interested to see if you know how to work that phone.
I can barely work the phone.
All right.
Okay, now you're on the
Oh.
record.
Okay.
Okay, taping you.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Right.
being filmed too. by the
Right,
way,
but-
but, okay.
I know. Years ago, I'd taken a box of Irish Spring soap
Mm-hmm.
and a bath towel to City Hall to do take a shower in the $200,000 shower that a budget director had built there,
Mhm.
and I was making fun of it.
Yeah.
And in the video, the Tribune video, I was also like writing notes down on paper, and people were mocking me, like, "Why are you writing notes down? It's already on video."
Technology mystifies you. We
Okay.
get it.
So the question: you don't like Bruce Rauner?
Well, it's not about like or dislike for me. It's about betrayal. And this is like, oh, he screwed up. Oh, he made some mistakes. It's about betrayal. It's about sticking your allies in the back repeatedly. And my point is, it's a very simple one. This whole like, be a team player and this and that. I don't know, what is being a team player when you're being bayoneted in the back by members of your team? Oh, hey.
For example?
Well, I mean on issues?
Yes, sir.
House Bill 40, sanctuary state, junk science on gender, surrendering on the largest state income tax increase in Illinois history, with a third of the caucus that he finances going south on him to pass it over his veto.
I would say that one should have been, he should have, I don't know why he didn't call them in the room and introduce them to the Nutcracker,
Right,
for
that's right.
example.
But right, so the fact he didn't, the fact he played Pontius Pilate instead says something.
And he spent the money.
Right, and he spent the money. He wanted it. He didn't want to wear the jacket for it. That's a cowardly act. It's a disingenuous act. And for people who went to Matt for him, it's another act of betrayal. The bailout of Exelon, so the same sort of corporate crony crap that has made the state a kleptocracy.
Somebody used to refer to the Combine.
Yeah,
Right, I wonder
right.
who that was.
Yeah,
Some
columnist
guy.
from a long time ago.
Right.
And so
When he was a man. When
Right,
he was truly
that's
a
right.
man in those days.
So I mean
Right.
that's just sort of off the top, and also competence issues and honesty issues with respect to how he handled the Quincy Veterans Home. I mean these are substantive issues. So everybody say, oh, it's personal, it's this, you don't like him. I don't like or dislike politicians. I don't fall in love with politicians. You're either the vehicle for what you said you would do, or you're not. And if you're not, you should be replaced. And if the Republican Party can't hold people who betray
You will deny me thrice.
the base
Right,
of the
exactly.
party, then we have no discipline, we have no value, and we are going to be deserving of no trust. And this is why Rauner finds himself, having a tough time eclipsing 30% of the vote against this buffoon billionaire of an opponent, Pritzker. I mean, there's a reason why things are the way they are, and everybody wants to say, well, you're not being nice, or you're being mean.
It has nothing to do with
It's
mean or
absurd.
nice.
Yeah.
But I would ask you, the alternative, this is what frosts me, because the alternative is Pritzker. And Pritzker means a state income tax of gargantuan proportions. He doesn't even have the decency to address what the specifics are of the tax he's going to levy.
Well, he's still trying to survey the...
He's listening. Yeah,
He's not listening to her. He's
Yeah.
surveying the General Assembly to find out what middle-class income is. He's not heard this
I
term
love
before.
it when Democrats talk about the middle class and then they never define
Uh-huh.
what that is.
Although Rauner defining it 50 to 200 grand, so then everybody's in the middle class. I mean, the median, this is not complicated, by the way. The median household income in the state is $54,000. So that gives you sort of center cut of where middle-income families are, because you know what median means. Right. So anyway.
We're getting lost, but you're taking me into the weeds here, Dan.
Okay, well, pull me back out.
I want to look at the big picture. I'm wondering if it's time for conservatives to go, look, we've kicked Rauner in the butt, but really we should come home because the alternative of Pritzker is too much to bear. And Rauner, I have been critical of him when he was running against Gene Ives with those ridiculous ads that she was Mike Madigan's
Favorite Republican.
child, daughter.
Right.
But I look at the alternative and I'm thinking, is this a responsible thing to go, to basically usher in Pritzker without a fight? Or should conservatives come back home?
Well,
Even if he's the imperfect vessel, as we say.
Does this rings very familiar to me? It's the same argument that was made in defense of Mark Kirk in 2014.
It wasn't me.
Well, okay,
I
well
did not defend him.
then you have to explain yourself because
But look what we got. Tammy Duckworth.
I know.
Thank you.
But the
She's going to breastfeed her child in the,
it's,
and that's
right.
her policy
Well,
position.
She's got
Right.
Schumer and Durbin to help with that.
Mhm.
But here's the thing: the argument was made.
The wet nurses.
The argument was made.
Yeah.
You got to come back home for Mark Kirk, even though he's stuck in your back at every turn, because control of the Senate could hang in the balance. And so, we need to support Mark Kirk's reelection. I didn't buy that argument then, because you can forever make that argument. So then there's no standard. There's nothing you can't do, because in the general election you'll be running against someone slightly worse, and so then we're all supposed to come home and continue this descent into madness. And I'm not going to do that. I didn't do it with Mark Kirk, and I won't do it with Rauner.
All right, I grant you the point, but then there's another aspect of this. Are there those present company not accepted in this argument that say we shall not forgive Rauner, who would stand to benefit from, notice I'm trying to do this diplomatically because we're friends, stand to benefit from the destruction of the Republican Party and the rebuilding of that party?
The Republican Party has been destroyed. The Republican Party is a legal fiction right now at present.
Oh, why? Because
The-
they,
the
they don't
Repub-
have candidates in how many races, and Arthur
No.
Jones is the candidate in the third.
Well, yeah. I mean, that doesn't help. That sort of goes to my argument.
Right.
So, I mean, with the Republican Party is Bruce Rauner's checkbook. That's not sustainable. So the Republican Party is either going to
The lesser of two weevils, Dan.
Yes, but the Republican Party is either going to reconsider itself, even if by some miracle Bruce Rauner won. The party is either going to reconsider and reintroduce itself as having something to say that's important to people's lives and having the courage to back up what they say, or not. It's really that simple. So,
Thank you for joining me on this where I question Dan.
I mean, but so for example, I mean, so me and other people that are part of my little cabal,
evil cabal.
of course, we're supporting, I don't know, 15 legislative candidates around the state. We're focusing. We've done SaveYourHomeNow.org campaign
Correct.
focusing on property taxes. We're supporting incumbent holds. We're supporting open seat holds that are Republican, have been held by Republicans, and we're supporting challengers against incumbent Democrats. So, there's sort of a competition going on, a bit of a science fair, and we're presenting our project and our theory about this particular issue called organizing a political party and trying to save the state from itself. And Benedict Rauner and the Surrender Republicans are presenting a different project. And then it's up to the Republican primary voters and the powers that be and the financiers to decide which mousetrap they like best. Just as we presented a choice in the primary with Jeannie Ives, and they narrowly chose to continue with Bruce Rauner. And there are consequences to choices. So we presented a choice. They rejected that choice. Fine, fair and square. And then there's consequences to it.
Dan Proft always talks about politics is not a zero-sum game. I've heard Dan Proft say this, right? So there's another third wave here.
Okay.
Rauner loses, Pritzker wins, takes orders from Mike Madigan and the unions that finance Mike Madigan, and thousands of people leave the state and say, "This is our cue to leave the state of Illinois." The most productive people, the people that earn and save and pay taxes, are like refugees, like Armenian refugees from the Turks.
So we're not arguing a difference in kind. We're arguing a difference in degree, because that's what they've been doing for the last 4 years under Rauner.
Right, but if Pritzker is in, the floodgates open up more.
Probably so, particularly if they go with a graduated state income tax or a LaSalle Street tax or pension tax or whatever else they want to tax. But so my point, though I think it's a bit misunderstood, do I think Rauner would be marginally better than Pritzker? Yeah. My point is, it's a fait accompli. I've been saying it for a year and a half. If he is the nominee, we're going to lose the race. So I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm making a positive statement. Here's what's going to happen.
I think I said the same thing.
Right, here's what's going to happen. So people want to argue this normative, here's what should happen. Well, guess what? We're in October, and that's very unlikely to happen. I said it was not going to happen for all of these reasons, which have all borne out. If assuming the outcome is what I suggested it would be, and you suggested it would be. So then it's a question. That's a question of where do we go from here?
I knew it when he signed House Bill 40. He just blew his foot off, his right foot or his right hand, and you don't kill your base as you're going into a general election. You don't do it, and he did it. But that said, if Pritzker wins, then and that means, which we haven't talked about, the down ballot, right?
Right.
Because this debacle also affects people running in state legislative races and in Congress.
I understand. I mean, I'm involved in all these races. I see it. I understand it, but that's the reality of the political landscape. So I just go back to say, this is a political landscape. How did we get here? How did we get this political landscape? Here's how we got here. Are there any lessons to be learned if the numbers hold where they are now? There are. are we going to learn them and chart a different course starting November 7th? That to me is the big question if what's predicted comes to pass.
Well, I still haven't decided whether I'm going to ask conservatives to come back for Pritzker reason. But I understand that the party itself, the Republican Party, I've never seen it so bad. I've never seen it so weak, and I've never seen it so almost like you feel like taking a pillow and doing it, putting it over, just pushing down.
Well, I mean,
I felt bad when
but
when Edgar was running with Bill Cellini and Big Bob Shalander, and he was being called a reformer and a hero and all that, and I could see it then. And Thompson with his wild spending plans, I could see it then. It's like they lost their way. There was no way.
Right, and that's sort of a remarkable statement you just made, considering you have a guy who spent $125 million of his own money, has his guy in there as the House Minority Leader, has his guy in there as the Senate Minority Leader, has his guy in there as the State Party Chairman. He had the run of the place. And this is where we're at with, and so it's not a resource issue anymore. You can't say, oh, well, if only we had the money Madigan is. We've had it. Now, he ran into a billionaire that could come over the top on him the way he came over the top on Quinn, and he doesn't like it. Well, that's tough. That's what happens when you fall in love with a checkbook rather than build infrastructure and have a purpose and have a robust, dynamic organization that recruits and develops talent. So those were choices that were made for the past 4 years. And so the statement you just made, you've never seen it weaker in your lifetime, is an incredible indictment of the actual performance.
I see Pritzker coming to devour the state.
Well,
I see this gargantuan...
Madigan already beat him to it.
Yeah.
That's why he can only eat an apple for lunch. He's already full on other people's dreams.
You were going to use the Night King. I remember you were thinking about this. We talked about it once. The Night King from Game of Thrones, that he touches you, you turn to ice. Mm-hmm. You were going to use that on the Madigan piece. Never saw it. It's almost like your animosity or understanding of Madigan's role hasn't changed, but you've kind of, your understanding that Rauner is equally to blame for all this, for his weakness.
Well, you just said that Pritzker is going to be Madigan's order taker.
Don't you think so?
Yeah. So what's changed?
Has he ever had a job?
Jamie Pritzker?
Yeah. Has he ever done a lick of, besides blaming his wife for the bleeping toilets? Has he ever done anything?
I don't know. I mean, according to the commercials, he's done a lot. So I don't
what?
know.
He grew up a poor
He was raised
billionaire?
He was raised by a single mom. It's a real story of overcoming challenges, beating the odds.
All right. So let's dismiss now the Rauner.
All right.
Since I'm taking over your podcast.
No,
What
your
about,
view is we're trying to help you work through this
Thank
conundrum you have, whether to make this clarion call for conservatives or not.
What about the rest of the ballot? What effect does this have on the down ballot, particularly legislative races that you...
Well, it's a drag. It doesn't mean that they're unwinnable, but it's a drag, there's no question. And in the suburbs, let's be real honest with ourselves, again, part of the political landscape, whether you want to believe it or not, or you want to say it's fair or not, is that Trump is a drag in the suburbs in the collar counties. So those are additional hurdles to overcome. But when there's no value proposition for the party and there's no kind of purpose to run other than you can't turn it over to this guy, when people have made their judgment on you, and the closest thing you can come to a mea culpa is to say, what my problem was, I was too courageous. Have your little tiny dancer in the cardigan sweater moment. And people are just like, go pound sand. Yeah. Give me another chance.
Or you could let Pritzker
I'll be better this time. I'm not letting anybody do anything. I'm just go back and say, I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen and why it's going to happen.
Yes, Dan.
All right.
You were saying on your show that I've taken over, I've appropriated your show.
Switching gears, speaking of arguing about which is the tallest skyscraper in Wichita, the mayor's race, the Chicago mayor's race.
That is the main event in Chicago in politics in the state.
Is there anybody in the field right now excluding yourself for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
who represents the possibility of system change?
Yes, there are several.
Okay.
Troy LaRaviere or Jamal Green would represent system change.
Uh-huh. In what way?
You might not like the system that they change.
To disband the police force? I mean, what do you mean? What would the system
Correct.
change be?
Tony Preckwinkle or Bill Daley would be status quo. They're two horns on the head of the same goat, and they're running the same kind of campaign. I'm Tony Preckwinkle. Although, did you notice Maxine Waters did not come into town?
She was a no-show for that
She
big
was a
event.
no-show. That kind of depressed me. I lost a whole column on that. Would have been great.
Another Maxine Waters casualty.
Oh, yeah. And what about Paul Vallis?
What about Paul Vallis?
I think that there's something there. Although, personally, I was talking to another candidate for mayor. And this candidate, a prominent political person, said, oh yeah, Kass, I understand you're Greek, he's Greek, it's a Greek thing. And I counted to 10. And then I told him, the next person who drops that, I will go Darth bleepin' Vader. Because I think of, I don't like identity politics, number one. I hate it, and I hate what it does in terms of thinking, and I hate that whole ethnic nonsense.
But that's what we do here. That's what everybody else. I mean, look at what we're doing now with who's the Latino candidate going to be? Now that Chuy dropped out, Susana Mendoza, she wins re-election, she'll be the Latina or Latino candidate. This whole idea that, it's the irony of all of these identity politics obsessed, intellectual midgets, is they talk.
I've mentioned the lack of Latino candidate as well.
Well, but they talk
because Rahm was running as Zorro.
Well, I understand, but they talk unity, right? Bring the city together, but they're advocates for balkanization.
Exactly.
Unity. Okay, we have to have a Latino candidate, we have to have a black candidate, we have to have a Greek candidate, we have to have an Irish candidate.
Get into the Greek candidate thing. So I tell this candidate who brought it up on the phone call. So we were off the record. People can call me and beef and bed shit they want.
Yeah.
I said, I want you to remember this name. Nicholas Blaze. Remember Nick Blaze? The mayor of Niles. He married my godmother.
Then he went to prison.
He went to prison, and before he went to prison, I said they should double his sentence, and if he dies in jail, too bleeping bad. And and I haven't spoken to my godmother for 20 years, and I love her. But you know what? He was Greek, right? And then, remember Alexei Janulius?
Yeah, he was the failed mob banker, ran against Mark Kirk in 2010.
And his friends at
Josh Urango.
Josh Urango. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
And I
nice
kind of
friends named Josh.
Yeah. At the Polecats. Was he? I think he was the director of beverages or something. Beverage consultant.
It's a going concern.
Mm-hmm. And I remember getting kind of like lit up a little bit from Greeks. Why aren't you with them? You're Greek, they're Greek. And I hate it. And I ripped them I said, thank you very much. I'm going to write another Janulius column right now. And it's that attitude that I told this candidate, drop the bullshit. Excuse me, you have to cut that out.
No, you don't.
I drop the bullshit.
I swear at the City Club.
Because I will drop a hammer on him. I think that Vallis represents I see Mendoza coming in, Susana Mendoza. She's running for state controller now, Democrat. She's a Mike Madigan creature. So you're going to have Mike Madigan being the boss of Illinois, having the governor bringing him apples on a silver platter, and having the mayor of Chicago in his pocket? I don't think so. Then you have Preckwinkle and Daley. I don't see it.
Well, so why is Vallis interesting? I mean, well, I want to hear what you say.
I want to hear your criticisms.
Well,
I'm not going to defend him, but
I mean, of the field, I mean, he's the only adult in the field. I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
He's the only one with specific plans, a specific understanding of the city budget. He's wonkish to a fault because he on the stump and speed he gets a little wonkish. He gets a little too green eye shades.
Correct.
And you got to have kind of a clear message that you're driving. But so that's more of a criticism of his sort of political discipline and messaging chops, not his intellect or his seriousness about K through 12 reform. I mean, I like that he's got a track record of supporting school choice and charter schools, not just here when he was CPS superintendent, but in Philadelphia, in New Orleans.
A charter school, one of them that takes at-risk kids, still in existence today, and basically saved thousands of kids.
Yeah, look, I you know, and I don't think he's some sort of messiah. And
no, there's no such thing
exactly,
as a messiah.
Exactly.
And I want a strong
right.
council. I want a strong city council.
Well, you're not going to get that because of who's on the city council. Talk about 50 trained seals.
Pigeon racings to make 47. Pigeon racing to make the Polish community happy.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
I mean, look, so I could see Vallis as that would mark an improvement, but it's interesting to see that Vallis is having a hard time putting the scratch together because the financier class is going to
That's interesting
Daley.
Because they're going to, okay, let's do...
Largely.
You know, one of the things I hate about politics and political writing is that people who never covered boxing mention that it's like a prize fight, but styles make fights.
Yeah.
All right? So matchups count, as you know from your political work. Match me Daley versus Preckwinkle. Who wins?
Preckwinkle.
Correct. Because why?
Black unions.
And another 50 years of Daley is like really exciting. Like, let's go to the next one.
And also, Bill Daley's a dope. I mean, so there's that.
I don't think he's a dope, but he's...
Well, I do. That's why I said it. He's a dope. He's never done anything in his life. He's like sort of a mini-me of J.B. Pritzker. He's just ridden on the coattails of his brothers, and they let him dress in a suit and go be at J.P. Morgan and pretend he's a businessman. I mean, it's
I'd like
a joke.
to see Michael Daley. Michael's the boss.
Well, Michael's smart. There's going to be one smart one in every family that big. But here's the thing.
So he loses to Pritzker.
But Daley's a bad candidate. Daley's not good at the stump. He's not going to be good at messaging either. He has nothing to say and nothing to propose. So so the question is the question if you're handicapping this.
Yeah.
Can Vallis?
That's what we're doing.
Right. So can Vallis not only get into that first or second slot with say Preckwinkle, who's sort of a soft front runner, but then can he pull together all of a more difficult coalition to herd because she'll have all the institutional interests.
Because that, I think, is why I like the candidacy, because of what you said. Because to bring those coalitions together is what is necessary to save the city.
Yeah. And
get away from the knee-jerk black messiah, white messiah BS. Now, if you look at Preckwinkle versus Daley, you said Daley loses, right? Mm-hmm. I agree. Preckwinkle versus McCarthy.
Preckwinkle, I mean, that'd be a walk.
Right. So if you mentioned that the business community is all with Daley, even though Bill just signed it, I think he raised like almost $1 million, but he gave himself $500,000.
Yeah.
So he's really only raised $500,000. Why is the business community with Daley then? If can't they do the math that you just did in your head based on matchups?
Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons, but let's just say that
because they owe them.
Well, that may be part of it. The other part of it is, though, too, is I mean, the C-suites in the city are full of cowards too, and they're full of people.
Not Bill Wirtz.
Rocky Wirtz.
I mean Rocky.
Well, I'm not right. I'm not saying completely.
Rocky can see it.
I'm not saying
I'm
not saying completely. I'm saying generally. Because remember, generally, all the people who've been in charge here for 100 years in the city and state have been financed by the same guys. So how are they doing? What's the track record?
Right.
How are all of your guys performing? Because, it's the old line that you like to quote from Bill Cellini. It's the when they're in charge, we're in. When we're in charge, we're in. We're always in. Right? So they've always been in, even when they back the wrong horse initially, they get around to the right horse in terms of who wins. But they get around always, almost religiously to the wrong horse in terms of anybody that's going to do anything positive for this state and city. Otherwise, this wouldn't be the worst governed city in the country and the worst governed state in American history.
Dan, have I not taught you anything?
I'm sorry, Father.
What are people's favorite subjects? Themselves. Besides
sports,
besides the fire sucks, okay? The second favorite is
what's the fire?
Right. Okay, just remember this for your grandchildren later. Please save this. And all they want, really, I mean, it's almost like it's almost like a cartoon of a Balkan nation 100 years ago with bankers and officials hoping to find some strongman, some pasha, that they can kiss the hand of. They want to kiss the hand. That's what they want. They don't care about the city. They care about themselves and the next cycle or two fiscal years. Why the old politics has to go if the city's going to survive is because of that.
What about a Republican candidate for mayor? I know it's a nonpartisan race, but what about a center-right candidate for mayor, yourself excluded for a moment?
Like Dan Proft.
No.
Why do you dismiss it all the time?
Well, I mean,
hello?
I'm asking you a question. Why shouldn't I dismiss it?
I used to tell people, find me a black conservative Republican.
Yeah.
Conservative.
Yeah.
You win the race. Where's that
I'm
person?
down for that.
Where's it?
Where's a conservative? I mean, finding conservative Republicans generally is difficult, regardless of race. I mean, look, I agree, but this is another failure of the Republican Party. Back to that, but this once in a century opportunity, we haven't fielded a legitimate candidate that's from the center right since Don Hayter in 1987, and I mean a legitimate person, an adult, a successful adult, who was competent, and against a weak incumbent, Tiny Dancer 15, no challenge, to at least establish a beachhead and extend the conversation, expand the parameters of conversation. So I think there's a great opportunity here, but I don't think I'm the right guy for it.
Well, I don't see one that's even trying to raise a profile.
Part of it is you need somebody that's willing to say, I'm going to do this to establish that beachhead and to present some ideas and positions that people haven't even contemplated because it hasn't been presented to them in a interesting or thoughtful or salient way. And so, look, we got lots of talented people who live in the city, lots of very successful people. So somebody comes out of retirement. I mean, they're retired now from a career business or whatever, and they say, I'm going to be at least a spokesman for our issues. We've seen that in congressional races. I don't see why we can't get that in a mayor's race.
Because anyone who dared stand up against Rahm risked having their entire lives destroyed. People were afraid of him because he's a knife fighter. And they knew that anybody...
Yeah, but wait a second. We're starting from the premise that a Republican has a slim to none chance of playing in this race, or the race in 15 for that matter.
Isn't Gary McCarthy running as the Trump candidate?
So why would you be focused on... No, he's not running as a Trump candidate.
Yes, he is. He's the Trump candidate.
Well, maybe in persona,
or Jerry Joyce's kid, another one.
Well, he hasn't even showed up on the radar yet.
They're out there with the bagpipes.
Yeah, okay. Those bagpipes are very faint at this moment. Yeah,
I can barely hear them.
So again, I asked the same question. What is there to be afraid of? They wouldn't train their sights on you because you're not going to be relevant in all likelihood, right? You're not going to be a threat to the nomination. You're not even going to be a threat to the runoff. It would literally be, you'd have to go into it believing, even if you had resources you're willing to spend of your own and generate, you'd have to go into it saying, we're going to put a flag down in Chicago and try and build something around it.
If I had that kind of money, I'd rather buy a newspaper if you're going to have an impact.
Well,
than
okay.
run for office.
Well, okay, but so to my point, but I appreciate that you want me to run into Panzer Fire. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes,
I'm
please
glad
go
I'm
ahead.
thinking about this right. Yeah,
I'll run
please,
out
you
there.
run. It'll be fun for me to
Right.
watch. Yeah,
Yes, it will be.
Okay. Yeah.
And as you carry your head home,
Right.
you know, holding it before you, your sightless eyes shining into the darkness, looking
As
for
somebody's
that one
carrying
honest.
carrying my head.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm getting my art.
You would have to be like my Tennyson.
my
You'd have to be
Google
writing
art.
like
Right.
Charge of the Light Brigade in my honor or something
Ulysses.
like this. Yeah, exactly.
Ulysses Return.
So on the mayor's race, if it is going to be, let's not change a thing in 19, and we stick with Daley or Preckwinkle or some other instrument of the status quo, then what happens to the city and by extension the state?
Goes.
What does that mean? Like civil unrest goes or what?
Look, there are neighborhoods, as you know, that many people who like read my column or watch the news, they don't even know. They don't even go through the neighborhoods.
Right.
On the south and west side, people are shot in the face. They're shot off their porches. They're shot going to school. This is slaughter, mayhem, ignorance, fear. It's dangerous, and it's just ready to go. There's hopelessness. They can't seem to get capital. You know, for example, Trump has offered this in his tax plan. Brother, can you pair a dime? Remember Jack Kemp? I mean, a similar idea to get capital into these neighborhoods through tax credits, etc. It has to be done. I mean, if you're going to look for the future of the city, that has to happen. You just can't have Paris, you know, like this, the central city protected, and then all around it ready to torch.
Is that your greatest fear about the future of the city?
I don't know about my greatest fear, but it's out there.
Well,
I mean, you think about the misery and the suffering of people, the people that have been destroyed. I know they don't like it when I say it. The left hates it, but you know, Daniel Patrick Moynihan was correct, and people didn't listen to him, and too bad. But I see generation after generation. You do too. When you ran for governor, you mentioned it, and people don't want to hear you because they'd rather have what? Some truck pull up and some Democratic commitment throwing hams and turkeys off the back of the truck. Vote for me. Here's your turkey. Here's your ham. That stuff is so old.
Well, it's new every cycle because it continues to work. So how do you stop it?
I interviewed for my podcast, and I think I did a column on it. The Chicago Way, by the way.
Yeah.
William Calloway.
Yeah. One of the kind of the citizen journalists that got the Laquan McDonald tape released.
He was one of the activists from South Shore, right there from 71st and Jeffrey, where that blow up happened in the summer. Interesting. We were sitting in the car, the recorder, doing the podcast, and I mentioned the mayoral candidates. I mentioned Tony Preckwinkle. Silence. I said, well, brought up the, hams and turkeys, that whole Democrat. It's not hams and turkeys now, it's grants. What they use government grants.
Yeah.
And it's the same damn thing. It's not about unleashing potential, it's about controlling development. And he was rather unimpressed. I just found that to be interesting. That for political purposes, that activist, here you have Tony Preckwinkle, she's supposed to be the black candidate now to get back to identity politics.
Well, so what's it?
Not interested.
Well, so what? Right, it's Mays Jackson, who's on BON. We've had on this show. You know Mays, I know Mays.
Right.
I mean, he's the one I stole his moniker for her, Queen Sugar. I mean, he's no fan of Tony Preckwinkle either.
No, he's not.
So maybe there's generations that are in their 20s,
But
30s, 40s.
Is Lori Lightfoot the candidate to take her on? I don't think so.
No, I mean she's like a reflection of Tony Preckwinkle. It's the same candidate.
I'm just trying to get past the racial stuff.
Okay, but here's the question though. So where's the talent? Where's the political talent in this field? Where's the political
I
talent in the
just told
state?
you.
No, well,
I told you. I think Vallis is the best candidate.
no,
for
okay.
this.
Well, yeah, but he's also 65. I'm saying, where is the
Young talent.
like young talent across racial demographics, across ideological demographics? The interesting thing to me is, all these people, Val's 65, Preckwinkle's 70, Daley's 70, all these people are they're all baby boomers. There is
Correct.
no second level talent, political leadership in
What
the
would you
state at
expect?
any level.
What do you expect in a state that's run by warlords? The downstate Republicans, the Republican Party, has for many, many years dominated by the silent laugher who's under the radar, Bill Cellini, until he went away for a baseball season. And his wife came up to me at federal court and said, "Hello, Mr. Kass. I'm Mrs. Cellini."
Mm-hmm.
Give me that look. I was like, wow, that's good.
She didn't give you the Judas kiss, did she?
She didn't kiss me.
But so.
But I mean, you have this is what happens when you have warlords, just like up north here in Chicago. The Daleys, the Madigans, they strangle young people. They strangle the young. They allow certain people to survive because it's to their benefit, or they mold them like Susanna Mendoza.
So, what would you like to see? What watershed moment could you see that would reshuffle the deck in the city or state with respect to these topics?
Is this like some kind of Socratic dialogue where you're going to lead me to?
No, I'm asking you a question, and then I'll give you the answer.
Well, just give it.
No, I'm not. No, I'm asking a question. What would you like to see, or what do you think is a realistic moment that the landscape provides for that could truly reshuffle the deck? Is it Vallis being elected against the institutional candidates?
I think that Vallis being elected against those candidates and with some progressive. See, the thing is interesting to me. I'm just coming from a City Club luncheon, and there I see Scott Wagsback. Okay?
Yeah.
Another progressive. I like him. We disagree on many things, but I don't doubt his honesty or concern.
Right.
And another Fire fan. And I was interested by this, that here the progressives, as represented by the leader of their caucus, there at the Paul Vallis event, knowing that reporters would see them and question them. To me, that it was interesting. But I'm not giving you the earth-shattering, life-changing moment that you'll drop upon me now.
No,
I'm fortified with a good scotch, and I'd like to hear it.
No, I mean, as long as you keep running the same game, you're going to get the same outcomes within a very narrow variance. And so I don't see it, is what I'm saying. I don't see it.
When does Dan Proft talks about the Ponzi scheme? Yeah. You've talked about the pension issue, the Ponzi scheme, the taxes, and so forth. When does that hit critical mass? And these coppers and firefighters, oh, sorry, we can only pay you 50 cents on the dollar. When does that happen?
Well, I mean, now that Tiny Dancer's abandoned the $10 million borrowing scheme, gone on his way out the door.
Scoop and toss, yeah.
Yeah, then you're talking about, police and fire pension funds that are 3 years from being unable to pay out current beneficiaries. So maybe that's it. I mean, I was looking for like a positive watershed moment that the landscape provides for to stitch together this coalition you're talking about Vallis would have to put together. But maybe that's not it. Maybe it's going to have to be a true cataclysmic event that will be the watershed event. And it will be police and fire banging on City Hall's doors, or litigation and rolling protests in Daley Plaza, and the public sector unions kind of cannibalizing one another. I don't know.
Martin Koldyke? Martin Koldyke, one of the, Brahmins, right?
Yeah.
Of Chicago. He was on the school board years ago. There was going to be a strike, CTU strike. I'm in a hospital with pneumonia, literally. Martin's on the phone, calls me, and we got to talk. I'm like, I'm in the hospital. I'm dying of pneumonia. And he goes, there's going to be a strike. I said, let it be a strike. Burn it down. Mm-hmm. Which is what you've said with respect to some of the state union workers demands, and Rauner refused to Scott Walker it, right?
Right. Correct. I mean, it seems to me, so you have to, it's not about breaking unions as a matter
No,
of course. It's public sector unions being very specific. It's AFSCME and SEIU and the teachers' unions being even more specific. And until you wrestle control of the state away from them, I just see things continue to get worse. And they have shown that they are more than ready to liquidate any asset that exists. You think Daley did a good job of liquidating assets for pennies on the dollar when he was mayor. You haven't seen anything yet. They're liquidating everybody's home. But the problem is this counterintuitive dynamic where the worse they make it and the more they force people out, like getting out from underneath their home, the better it gets for them, because who's left? Beneficiaries of transfer payments and champagne socialists. And so that's why I see, even with that event coming to pass, then all of a sudden, you're going to have a mass epiphany, and people are going to say, let's get a conservative reformer in the mayor's on the 5th floor. Let's get a conservative reformer in the governor's mansion.
Out of the ashes. That's all they're really. We are on the way to that.
All right, federal races in Illinois. You've got competitive congressional.
Roscoe,
Hultgren, and Boss downstate, and then you've got the prospect of Sack of Durbin is up for re-election in 2020. He's a good Catholic. Yeah, that's right. So
have you now or ever been an Orthodox Christian?
Have you
Dan
now,
Prof.
right, or had
I
a
can't
drinking game inscribed in your yearbook or something? But the congressional races here, and the prospect of a Durbin re-election right after November 6th.
I want to see Jeannie Ives challenge him.
Challenge Durbin.
And kick his butt. I've had it with him. I really don't. It's not really policy as much as that, like, sometimes everything's a gut feeling. Sometimes it gets to there.
Yeah.
Like the toilets and Pritzker letting his wife take the fall. When Durbin talks, that unctuous, I don't know how to put it. In the Greek, it's the guy who talks, a person who talks across the fence and whispers malevolence. And the name is Ruffiano. A Ruffiano.
Okay.
A gossip. Like the way he comes off. And his wife making all this money as a lobbyist, and he says, oh, well, I don't know how that happened. I mean, come on, man. I've just had it.
He's Kalish from Game of Thrones.
Peter Baelish.
Baelish. Is it Baelish?
Yes, and you know
Is
what
that
happened
the character
to him?
Baelish?
I don't want to spoil it for all you people.
Yeah.
But something happens.
Well, something always happens.
Mm-hmm.
What about the congressional races? Roscoe, Hultgren, Boss.
Roscoe's in trouble, right? The Democrats have sought to weaponize the gender issue. They have the Me Too issue and the Kavanaugh thing, and it's all piled one on top of the other. And they're pushing to get rid of this guy. And he's not really, I don't even think he's a conservative. I mean, he's kind of more of a moderate Republican. And the fellow that they're backing, what's his name?
Sean Casten.
In the Kavanaugh hearings, there was a clerk of Kavanaugh sitting behind him. Remember? Long black hair, kind of attractive lady. Long black hair. Didn't Casten freak out and say when she was scratching herself or scratching her ear or something, she was giving out white racial hand signals?
Yeah. I mean, it's just
Okay, that should get you laughed off the stage, the political stage, but he's still there. Perhaps because he has protection in the media, and that viewpoint is protected. But it's devastating, and it could cost Roscoe his seat.
I'd ask you about the media, but nobody in the Chicago media talks to you, so I'm not sure much.
You can ask me anything, Dan.
Well, I mean, the Chicago media, they're a adjunct to the Chicago Democrat Party and the crime families. So
I don't think so.
Well, okay, that's a.
I think there might be hyperbole in that.
You think that? You think
Just
so?
a bit.
Maybe just a bit.
Let's put it this way: I am as I say.
Do they bear any culpability for what the state has become?
Oh yeah. There's nothing more malleable than a white liberal terrified of being called a racist in the media.
So that's all of them.
Present company except.
Well, all of the white liberals. You're not a white liberal in the media.
And Greeks weren't white until 1968.
I didn't know when Greeks became white. Okay.
Don't you know? That's when.
I'll stipulate. So stipulate.
I wrote it in a column, and people actually thought it was true. It was when
of course
people asked me, Kass, why do you think you can write about minority politics? You're not a minority. I said, yes, we were. Greeks were not white until 1968, or whatever the year. The wedding night of Jacqueline Kennedy to Aristotle Onassis, I said Richard J. Daley wrote an executive order making all Greeks white from that day.
Yeah.
So yes, we do know.
It's sort of like if you say it like Durbin says it, people believe it. If you just say it's factual,
I'd rather cut my own throat than talk like that bullhead.
But so the media bears culpability. White liberals in the media, which is 90% of them.
Well, they caved on Daley, they caved on Harold Washington, they caved on Rahm, they caved on who's the fellow they ran against who ran against Obama? Jack Ryan. There's a I don't know if it's a lack of confidence in their viewpoint, but we've always been easily led and herded. And that bothers me. I think many, not all, but I think many have wanted to go along and get along. And I think part of that reason is because Harold Washington used to complain bitterly that the media was against him. People forget this now, that when Trump says it, it's like, that's a lie, though it's not. And the same thing with Harold Washington. He would say it as well. And he understood why. It wasn't because he was black or white. It was that reporters had their sources, and reporters wanted to protect those sources and their access to power. And I think a lot of that has to do with the calcified structure that we've had for many years.
So is this surmountable? The press corps being in bed with the powers that be, the C-suite.
I don't want to say they're in bed with the powers that be. You're saying it. I'm not.
All right.
So I'm already
some approximation of what I'm saying.
When I mention the Democratic media complex, I get people at work that get upset.
All right. I'll use your term then. Democrat media complex plus the C-suites plus all of the institutional interests that benefit from the kleptocracy. Mm-hmm. So is that overcome? Can that be overcome?
Yes.
How?
First, you have to identify, like you often say, you have to identify the problem. The problem is that journalism in America has long convinced itself that they were the iconoclasts, that they were the ones to stand up, like they say, speaking truth to power.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
As if they do. But really what it is, I think, is they are the guardians of the empire at the gate. They're the guardians of the establishment.
Right.
It's always been. In Roman times, there were people who would chatter, hence chattering classes, about the virtues of the emperor. Even if it was Caligula, he would have the virtues of Caligula. Same thing now.
So how do you get past the Praetorian Guard?
Give me $5 billion and I buy my own newspaper, and I don't know how you get past that. I mean, I find it interesting that all these people with a lot of money want to run for public office when really, and you're in the newspaper business now too, are you not?
Mm-hmm.
That gives you more leverage in the game. As far as I remember writing about Cellini and people saying, no, that's not true. Oh, come on, he's nothing. He wasn't nothing. All the people that I get ripped on by the little flacks at the CTU, not the flacks, but they're people, AFSCME and so forth, that I'm such a Republican. But I remember warning people that you have a political party like the Republican Party in bed with Bill Cellini and Bob Shalander, you are going to have disaster. Hence, I mean, what do we have?
What about what happened to journalists speaking truth to power, looking at the people who are influencers who are not in elective office?
Pardon?
What about the journalists looking at people who are not in elective office, who are influencers? You use Cellini as one example, but there are many examples.
Because
of that.
how about Griffin, for example?
But those are people that don't like bad. They're very sensitive to bad press.
Uline Griffin on the right, on the left, the Crowns. They just bought a newspaper, didn't they? For Renham, didn't they?
Fred Eichner.
Correct.
I mean, there's lots of examples. Lefkowski, I should say, and there are many examples.
We used to have
Michael Sachs, Byron Trott. It could go on.
I think you're 100% correct.
They don't like bad press. They don't like being looked at. So why not look at them?
I agree. It should be. We used to have something at the papers. Both papers had, when there was money. It's called, when columnists could go trout fishing on the north face of Nova Scotia, we had society writers, right? They'd write about society, galas, and so forth.
Yeah, like Cup. I mean,
I'm not talking about Cup, but there was institutional memory, and you want to know how it works. Institutional memory within the paper, both papers, all of them. And then political reporters could play off that and figure things out. Well, it's like the wealthy, the influencers, have put up a wall. And without any kind of coverage at all, they've been able to play their game. And I find that to be unfortunate and not fair to the taxpayers.
If November 6th is bad news, if it's not going to be a blue wave, I don't believe, but it could be a blue tornado, which it'll
Really?
touch down in spots.
It'll touch down in Illinois for sure.
Well, if it touches down in Illinois and it sweeps out Republican congressmen like Peter Roskam and Republican state legislators, and
how about Green?
Well, that's my point. If Republicans get hurt in the collar counties the way they got washed out of South Suburban Cook 20 years ago, and you essentially have nobody left, then what does John Kass do? Are you for the long haul in Illinois?
I keep flirting with the idea that I get myself a case of cheap bourbon and buy one of those tiny houses.
Where Rom's going to live?
No, tiny house where you have the bed and the commode, unfortunately, is right next to the sink.
That's going to be adjacent to Elon Musk's tunnel?
Like as big
O'Hare?
as, yeah. And I will move to Rensselaer, Indiana.
Oh. You're going to buy a tiny house in Rensselaer, Indiana.
And set it up under the windmills. And drink cheap bourbon and then scream at Illinois. Avenge me! Just like the dad in Red Dawn.
Interesting example. All right.
I don't know what to do, Dan. Are you going to stay?
Well, inscribe your name in Freedom Plaza. How about that?
Well, I come to visit Dan and go tarpon fishing. Maybe I'll do that.
I mean, at some point, I don't know. What is the?
I'm not going to look. I have the best job in the world, writing in my own hometown. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to pry this from my cold, dead fingers, because I love it, and I'm not quitting. Right. I'm not quitting. I'm staying I'm staying because it's not the politicians. I don't care about them. And it's not the influencers. And I don't care about going out and being seen by, you know that. I mean, you know me. But the people that read the stuff, they count. And there are a lot of good people that they watch this, they listen to you, they read me. They think, why is everyone against me? All I'm trying to do is make a living and pay my, bills, and people keep sucking my blood. And that's what they're doing to them. I'm not trying to say I'm a champion of anyone, but I flirt with the idea of leaving, and every time I think about it, and Betty wants to sell the house, I'm like, I want to stay. That's how it is.
All right, John Kass is going to stay and fight. That's actually the best answer I've heard. That's a good answer. I think that's right. I think that's the fun part of having a job where you're able to talk to a lot of different people, is that you do, as much as your faith in humanity is destroyed by the political class and the intelligentsia, it's sort of
well, do you think I write?
reestablished.
Do you think I write so that I'm going to be beloved by the Twitter,
No, obviously
the
not.
Twitter people, or
Obviously not.
my colleagues? I really don't give two figs.
Yeah, no, but I think that's right. I think that's after you're sort of set and stable, as you are, you raise your boys and all that, then I think that next level of sort of responsibility and opportunity, it's not hero talk, I agree
No,
with you,
it's
but
not that.
it's the responsibility and opportunity to provide a platform or be a conduit for people that otherwise don't have that platform. I think that's right.
It's like this thing now where we're constantly fighting, as a country, right? Fighting over federal powers, and we're fighting over this thing, like that a Supreme Court seat is going to make us turn and try to cut each other's throats. Why is that? I'm trying to think of how do I explain that in order to survive as a nation, we have to go back to federalism. We have to really have people understand what that is. If I don't like it in Illinois, I go to Indiana or I go to Kentucky or vice versa.
Yeah.
And to explain people that when you have centralized, concentrated power, the result is everything you're seeing.
That seems like a secondary fight if you're an Illinois resident, because we have a problem with power closest to the people here. Subsidiary's not working so great for us. All right, he is John Kass, page 2 columnist for the Chicago Tribune. His podcast, The Chicago Way, you can get it at the Tribune's website, weekly podcast.
Bi-weekly. Twice weekly.
Okay,
I
twice.
don't want to use the bi word. Twice weekly.
Sure, people will start talking. Twice weekly podcast, The Chicago Way. John Kass, thanks so much for joining us in this edition of Against the Current.
Thank you, sir.
Salute.
Salute.